Good morning, Rabbi Joseph.
Good morning, Pastor Jason.
Happy January to you. We are recording the week of the Iowa caucus, where something like 45 people voted to make.
Well, okay, 170,000 or no, 180,000. But I learned something that I wanted to have in our conversation.
Okay.
Because if it is a factor of politics, then it is a factor in conversations.
Mm-hmm.
There were entrance polls taken, people coming into the caucus,
Mm-hmm.
and 70%, close to 70% of this small selected group said they believed that the 2020 election was illegal, fraudulent.
So I'm wondering, as a Jew, do you have any familiarity with conspiracy theories?
I'm terrified, albeit it's a small data pool that still in January 2023 is holding on to the certainty that the 2020 election was fraudulent, illegal. Now, if
And I just because I mean I know some of these people. It's not what's remarkable, and I think what connects to your concerns and perspective is a fair percentage of the people who say the election was stolen did not think so immediately after the election.
right.
They've been made to believe this.
And there is no factual, legal affirmation. How many different court cases all around the country say,
Mm-hmm.
no, it was legal? So, the week before, the former president chose to use the word hostage
Mm-hmm.
in reference to those indicted, arrested, convicted, now imprisoned for committing various illegal acts on January 6th, and now refers to those as hostages. At the same time, there are 136 actual hostages. That number has changed now because of deaths confirmed. So we are watching Goebbels.
Okay. Let's not assume people know that history. Give us a little
Goebbels
Wikipedia.
was the propaganda master of Adolf Hitler, National Socialist, Nazi Germany. You take a people and help them learn something that is disconnected from their reality. And it is conscious and it is intentional. 3 people who have significant platforms began using the word hostage in the same reference.
Mm-hmm.
And then the data from Iowa, 68% of the people still believe that. Okay, I'm worried. I'm not worried politically. I'm worried that I've spent an entire career hoping that education and shared discourse would build stronger, honest relationships with people who had formerly hated me because I was a Christ killer. If we all then study history and we say, no, Rome crucified Jesus of Nazareth. Jews are not responsible for deicide. Piece by piece, we're going to make dialogue, shared human ethical relationships That's what I've done. It's why you and I met. And now, wait a minute, hostages are indicted, convicted, arrested, imprisoned. Criminals for sedition, insurrection, those are hostages. Then who are the people in Gaza?
Mm-hmm.
What does the word mean? The election is illegal? Okay. Is there a common vocabulary we can share? Or are some people conscientiously changing the vocabulary so the two of us won't know what we mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did I or did I not commit the crime of deicide? Am I a Jew who Christians believe committed a historical act? I have to know that if I'm going to be in relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I think it shows too that, once you've tilled the soil with this conspiracy theory, anything else could grow.
We're watching it.
Yeah.
Okay. These are hostages. They were kidnapped and brutalized by Hamas. No, these are hostages. They were indicted and arrested, put on trial, and convicted by the United States federal courts. Okay. Which word do we mean? So it's not just a political act.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to, what do you mean?
Speaking of what do you mean, you sent me a piece I saw in the New York Times titled "Is Israel Part of What It Means to Be Jewish?" So talk about what some progressive Jews are calling diasporism, and what is at
So we
stake.
go from something that I thought we all shared, the factual veracity that one person was elected and the other person wasn't elected. That's a factual, confirmable reality. To among the, and there will be many now, Shaul Magid's new book is just one. What will we define, what we Jews define, what Christians engaged with us define as a relationship with the modern nation state of Israel now after the past 2 years? 2 years of a very right-wing, very contemptuous Israeli government. Israelis arguing consistently, you don't represent us. And then a terror attack. So now the question is 15.8 million Jews in the world, the two critical masses living between the state of Israel and North America. Is Israel at the core of who I know myself to be? It has been in varying ways. I made a personal decision not to make Aliyah, not to immigrate, because how I knew myself, the family in which I knew myself, Israel's needs and my needs did not coalesce.
Mm-hmm.
But Israel was at the core of this first 2 generations post Auschwitz. And now we are having people think out loud who say, it's essential, but it's not quintessential. It's inside the list that defines me, but it is not the controlling element of what defines me. Up until 1948, Israel was aspirational.
Mm-hmm.
After Theodore Herzl, the Dreyfus Affair, and the 1896 to 1936, it was a theoretical realm made possible by the Balfour Declaration, the mandate process post World War I, and the beginnings of yes, we would have a community there. Then 1935 to 1945, the destruction of 2/3 of European Jewry, the refusal and duplicity of countries refusing to let Jews enter. And now Israel became a post Holocaust haven, not just aspirational, not Europe won't ever fully integrate us. Now it became this is where the survivors who couldn't find a place will go, and we will be in charge of our own destiny. Won't get into the partition, won't get into the protocols and policies. From 1948 to today, the modern nation state of Israel has been the realization of the aspiration. And we have taken in Soviet Jews, we have taken in Ethiopian Jews, North African Jews. We are what we claim to be, a ingathering haven of world Jewry. And Arabs and Druze, non-Jews, Muslims, we became what we claimed we were.
It just the politics aside, and perhaps Christians read the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, in a more narrative fashion than Jews do. But given that, it seems from a Christian reading of the Hebrew Bible to embrace a state of permanent exile is to ignore part of the arc of the story and to keep the story stuck at a particular point.
Or it's to be much more, how shall I put it, engaged in the third section of the prolepsis, the always, the already, and the not yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Look, the Zionism that was aspirational and became the necessity of post-Shoah world Jewry, that Zionism has not been developed into a Zionism that says not all Jews, as a matter of course, could or should go live in this place.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing in the article, nothing in what Shaul has written is shocking to me. But it does come at a moment in which there's a convergence. Have we reached a moment in Jewish history where Israel is a permanent, necessary, separate reality to global Jewry and its permanent reality?
And do you think that distinction is possible?
I don't know. In the 50 years of my rabbinate, in the 77 years of my life, there are so many things I didn't think were possible. I don't know. The Jewish community to which I dedicated my life and career, 1973, no longer exists. That Jewish community has ceased to exist. The Jewish community that now needs leaders will ask a different set of questions about its survival, about its priorities. So, is Israel going to be what it was in the 50s and 60s? Post 67 took on a whole new reality. Post 73, that reality was shifted. As 1.5 million former Soviet Jews were integrated, Israel was transformed completely. So, the question of a permanent diaspora makes a statement not just about the Zionism, it also makes a statement about we will have a different partnership.
Mm-hmm.
That has been emerging, a collective government process that permits the ultra orthodox, the amount of abusive power that has been exercised, abusive power that denies the reality of world Jewry, non-orthodox, non-religious, completely secular Jews. We could just take that, nothing else, and say, excuse me, the Israeli government cannot push upon all Jews the same religious point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a constitution. You want to maintain this strange coalition building process that allows small ultra-Orthodox political parties to sit in the corner with X number of seats and wait until the very end when you need their seats. What are you prepared to give them? They shouldn't be sitting in a 21st century Israeli government, in my view. But Israeli democracy permits it. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck to deal then with the power that they have in determining the standards by which someone who converts as a Jew to then go to Israel. And they exercise enormous power. You studied with a guy named Edelheit? Oh, no. We don't accept that. So,
one of the points the article makes, I thought was good, is diasporism, when applied to the Palestinians, would be repugnant to the Jews who advocate for diasporism. Mm-hmm. That you wouldn't expect another people group to exist without land necessarily.
The Jewish people have every claim on a piece of land to which they were promised according to Scripture and for which they have lived for thousands of years. Is it now, 2,000 years after the diaspora, is it now also possible to accept the reality that Jewish history contains global communities that are permanent? And the identity in those global communities is not translatable to Israel's unique sociology and anthropology. That means, okay, honesty. When I was part of a group of Reform rabbis in the 80s that argued, given the reality of interfaith marriage, the assumption that women would simply give birth to a child automatically, and that child would be Jewish, but that a Jewish man married to a non-Jewish woman would not equally have a source of identity for that child. No, no, it doesn't make sense at all. So patrilineality. We treated all interfaith marriages equally, not simply as a matter of happenstance of gender. Israel was furious. What are you doing to us? To which I said, it's not your sociology.
Mm-hmm.
We're answering a question that isn't your question.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
So, what Shaul Magid and others are now beginning to ask us, and it happens after months and months of protests and a horrible moment of Israeli government history, and now a terrorist attack. Do you want to talk about how this relationship should be redefined? There are a bunch of us who've been saying that for a long time.
There's a quote here in the piece that I thought was important. That says, non-Israeli Jews did not understand that diaspora is as much a mental as a geographic concept, a status that links disparate people, and so failed to perceive the Hamas attack as an assault on Jews everywhere. It is a lesson Israel could help teach them.
I would add the instant influx of anti-Semitism and concomitant silence to the nature of the anti-Semitism and the Hamas attack. That's how North American Jews have learned that lesson. It is existentially painful to accept prima facie that what Hamas has said about its eliminationist attitude, intent, includes me, my children, and grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Watching the anti-Semitism in the weeks that followed October 7th, and then the horrific silence. Yeah, I think we've learned that lesson.
Speaking of anti-Semitism, the other article you sent me was from the tablet. The title is "The Return of the Swastika" by Alvin Rosenfeld. Walk us through this article and why you flagged it for conversation.
I've known Alvin since 1976 when I was a rabbi in Michigan City, Indiana. He's created an extraordinary institute at Indiana University, an institute that studies contemporary anti-Semitism. In my book, What Am I Missing? I tell the story of the swastikas found on St. Mary's Cathedral in St. Cloud, Minnesota. That's right, there were 5 swastikas on the outside of a Catholic church. Catholic Church had been burnt down and was rebuilt in 1927 to 1931. And they used as a symbol something taken from a 5th century church, the Hakenkreuz, the broken cross. There were no Nazis yet, but that church kept those swastikas on the side of their church until I came to the university in 2002. The church had a much smaller parish. They understood the swastikas were now offensive. I helped raise the funds, taught a class, and was the first non-Christian invited to preach when the swastikas were removed. The swastika is a interesting symbol found among indigenous peoples, Hindus, but something happened with the swastika when it became incorporated as part of Nazi history. The swastika painted on the outside of a Philadelphia Holocaust memorial. They have a video of a man at 1:30 in the morning spray painting it. It was removed that day. There's an argument about whether you remove swastikas, because that's why they're put up in bathroom stalls, carved into desks. Should it offend you? Alvin is writing this because the question is anti-Semitism a Jewish problem? Are swastikas offensive? It's what I asked the parish council. Okay, you didn't put it up knowing it would be a Nazi symbol. There were members of this church that fought in the European theater against the Nazis. And they came back to St. Cloud, Minnesota. And they came back to a church which still now had not Hakenkreuz, but swastikas on it. I have come to campus because of federal class action lawsuit on anti-Semitism. So yes, that offends me. There was an Israeli on campus who had been part of the federal class action lawsuit. And Israeli TV came to interview him in front of the church and show the swastikas. My question to the parish council is, do those swastikas offend you?
What did they say?
Mixed reviews. They're part of our history. You're asking us to change our history. I think Alvin Rosenfeld is asking that question of all of us. Is this a Jewish problem or is it a problem?
This is I just want to I want to encourage people to check out the little volume by Karl Barth called Dogmatics and Outline, based on lectures he gave on the Apostles' Creed in the rubble of the Second World War. And it's a very thin volume, but it's the best Christian treatment of anti-Semitism I've stumbled across. And it's just a couple of paragraphs in the first article of the Creed where he talks about how anti-Semitism is worse than atheism, because atheism is an abstraction. Anti-Semitism is the specific rejection of how God has chosen to reveal himself in the world. And that's just a straight up Christian theology.
And Barth wrote that long before Vatican II, long before we got into the post-Holocaust new Jewish Christian dialogues. So,
and it really does come down to history. Again, I know we've talked about this, but it's either you believe God reveals himself in history or not. And if the former, then you can't you can't reject the Jews, and you can't not be in solidarity with them as the church.
So I sent you the piece because I have a relationship not only to Alvin, but I have a relationship to how famous should I be for removing 5 swastikas from a Catholic cathedral in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And they gave me one of the broken swastikas, which I gave my former synagogue. And people are confused. What do you want us to do with the swastika, Edelheit? It's an awkward, embarrassing, what do you tell people when you show them? Its removal is the product of dialogue. That's why I gave it to the synagogue. If the swastika is my problem, if it's a Jewish problem, a problem for Jews, then nothing about what the swastika means has been learned.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a problem, then all of us should be concerned when it's spray painted on any wall anywhere.
You know, you're more seasoned than I am, and I'm wondering, is this a unique time, or has there been another time where current events has brought phrases like Hitler was right and gas the Jews into just kind of common public discourse in the way that it's appeared in these demonstrations?
This is the spigot has been turned wide open this time. And
that's a good image.
It is a moment confirming the polarized darkness that 68% of the people still believe an election was fraudulent. And we watch a former president of the United States co-opt a word, and then it gets taken.
But he's a friend of Israel.
Oh, yes, he's a great friend of Israel. I can't tell you how much I miss him. I worry. You had to take your son to school because of the snow 2 hours late. I worry we will find ways to remove the snow and the schedule will be returned. I'm worried about what will we do to give your son back the vocabulary, the words that are being taken out of how he will learn to be an adult. So I think the value of Alvin's essay is to remind us this is horrific today. No, it's horrific, comma, it's particularly bad today. Not every day is a snow day, but every day is a day filled with hate. Some hate we see, we recognize, we understand immediately. We understand what a noose means among people of color. We immediately understand that. We know what a burning cross means. And swastikas mean something unique to the Jewish people, but there were 5.8 other millions of people killed by the same people who lived under the swastika. Roma, gypsies, people with different abilities, hundreds of thousands of Catholic Polish priests. Do we want to acknowledge that history has a burden to it? If you put up these symbols on the outside of your church because they mean Hakenkreuz, and then 7 years later, you look at them and they don't mean Hakenkreuz anymore, Okay, which history is it that you want the symbols to mean?
Can you, for people listening who may not have any familiarity, um, how how do rabbis such as yourself um, catechize young people into this history?
So let me answer your question by asking a few questions. Are they my children? Or are
Uh,
they children for which I'm responsible?
Children in your synagogue, say.
Okay. A Jewish child, even at the earliest realms, knows something about the fact that we have survived. What have we survived? There will soon be no one left with a tattoo on their arm.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I was 9 the first time I met someone with a tattoo. We need to make sure that our children, my grandchildren, understand that the Jewish community is a community that is inside history. Every year we have a Seder that talks about where our history begins in Egypt as slaves. And we were saved. To what end? For what purpose? I teach children that they are equal to everyone else. And then I teach them some people don't understand that. Each of my children has had a different experience in learning this on their own. My youngest daughter was told by a close friend who had come to our Sabbath table that she would not have a place in heaven. What does that mean, Dad? Why would she say that? 11, 12 years old. The children growing up now, right now, have been exposed to more brutality than any Jewish children in the last 50 years. Some have, I think, absorbed too much of a trauma, and we have to now deconstruct the fear. We have family in Israel. Will they be safe? Will they be okay? I don't want any child I love to be afraid of being a Jew. I am obligated to teach my children and grandchildren how to swim, how to survive, which means I don't want you to be afraid, but I do want you to be aware. So I teach children different things at different ages. If one of my grandchildren, 7, 6, showed me a picture of a swastika they had seen, what does that mean? I would tell a different kind of story than one of my grown adult children. I have to teach appropriate to what they can learn and absorb.
Sure.
When I've been asked to teach Christian children, about Jewish children. I often will ask them, do you know what a Jew believes? Depending on the age, I will sometimes be told they don't believe in Jesus. That's right. But they do believe in the same God that Jesus comes to teach us about. We must find a way to celebrate difference without denying validity. I am very fearful that we are losing the opportunity to celebrate diversity and just take the first exit that says, no, you're invalid. You're invalid because of your religion. You're invalid because fill in many different blanks.
This is perhaps a random question, but thinking of history and how you teach it, how do you feel about popular alternate histories? Like the Nazi hunting show on Amazon with Al Pacino, and like what was Boys from Brazil, that Gregory Peck movie. Like, how do you feel about fantasizing history in that way?
I liked Inglorious Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was Tarantino giving every Jew I know a moment in which we could go back and rewrite passivity.
So it's so rather than not taking the history seriously, it's a way of giving agency back.
And that's the risk. Then you get the terrible Amazon Prime, that revenge. And I only watched the first 2 episodes and I was screaming so much I stopped watching it.
Why were you screaming?
It misrepresents my values. And
that's really good.
My Portuguese isn't good enough to explain it. And there were big ads for it in the airports. Look, Israel is not a nation state anchored in vengeance. It is a nation state established before the Shoah and then populated by survivors. It is not a nation state created for the purpose of vengeance. So Dara Horn's awkward, difficult title, Jews Love Dead, People Love Dead Jews. Why is it that October 7th created something which shocked the world and then angered the world when we defended ourselves against the group who said, we're going to keep doing this? When I think of what I, as a grandfather, would want done to those perpetrators, I have to be very careful that delineates the fantasy and the reality of justice. I don't want Jews known for committing revenge. On the other hand, I don't want Jews without a self-determined army to protect them from genocidal terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
Where am I supposed to live in between these two options? Tarantino's Glorious Bastards, Al Pacino and a group of people who will find the real Nazis. I don't need a fantasy of the past when I'm trying to cope with the genocidal reality of today. I don't understand the history as taught by a radical Islamic group that seeks the full extermination of my community. I don't understand it. So going back and rereading what we couldn't have accomplished in World War II, I'm trying just to understand, how did this happen? Are we so naive as not to have listened? What is it about the Palestinian community? Their anguish has somehow not clicked with the rest of the world, that they are the victims of Hamas. But we're the ones taken to court for committing genocide.
Mm-hmm. This is helpful.
The world is done waiting for Israel to finish. Done. I get it. I completely understand. And how that ends and what happens the day after, a week after, the Jewish community will be left with trying to determine what Israel's next moment will be. In my opinion, not with this government and its moral obligations in taking care of its community. That is what a country and a government are bound to do. So it's legally required to build a safe room in your home in Israel. You have to build a safe room. So you're not safe until you build a safe room, and the safe room was how they captured and kept people so they could shoot them or burn them. Okay, I need time just to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, how do I live in North America, with a country that is so bitterly divided? I have to begin each day with, is the person with whom I'm speaking share a common historical discourse with me? If you believe the 2020 election was illegal and fraudulent, what else do you believe about me as a Jew? Is that hysteria or an honest way of defining what dialogue is about?
Yeah. Yeah. Mass delusions don't usually go so well for you all.
I don't think mass delusions go well for anybody, but in particular, we have a history from which we have tried to learn.
So, so you began with observations about exit polls in the Iowa caucus. I'm wondering, will the events since October 7th, will there be Jews who have always found a home in the Democratic Party who leave because they no longer feel safe within that party?
I don't know what Jews are ready to begin to define. in mid-January. There are very progressive Jews who are disappointed in the way the Biden administration has handled their need for a more empathetic, supportive Palestinian approach. There are Jews who are so pro-Israeli, pro-Bibi, that they will continue to find reasons to support Trump. There are Jews who see the future of democracy threatened, irrespective of what's going on in Israel. We are a relatively overeducated, well integrated, white community. There are Jews of color, but they remain the non visualized.
Mm-hmm.
And the perception of Jews as being more liberal than the norm, I think, no longer is a fair attribute. Yes, the majority of Jews have pursued a democratic platform, but I think everything has been confused, not merely by October 7th,
Okay.
But by the nature of the ongoing issues, not just of conspiracy, but dark division in the country. I no longer find myself comfortable being labeled as a progressive if progressives are defined by acronyms like DEI. Okay, that doesn't define my understanding of workplace diversity and equity. So I don't know how this puzzle will be put back together for November.
Okay. That's a good, honest answer. Well, Rabbi Joseph, thank you again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
I look forward to it too, and hope there are no more snow days.